Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Mr. Todd Wright. But we are joined by a family member of the podcast. It's the holiday season, apparently, not unbeknownst to Washington fans. But again, Mr. Logan Paulsen joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. How are you doing on this miserable Monday?
I'm doing all right. You know what I mean? It's I think as we get into the game a little bit more, we can talk about that. But I'm doing good. Personally good. Life's good. Christmas was good. So not a lot to complain about.
Yes, and so I like to call it a quicksand game, obviously from the replacements of what Shane Falco says is his biggest fear is quicksand. And it doesn't mean the actual physical quicksand, but in a football game or a game that you're playing in a competition, one thing goes wrong and then another, and before you know it, you're in over your head. And that's what this game yesterday kind of seemed like. I'm not even going to say the end score because it just pains me to say that, and it's so disrespectful. But what were your thoughts when you're watching that first half and 42 points going up?
So I think the quicksand analogy is really good. Like I've played in games like that in high school, college, and the NFL level, like where the harder you try, the worse the game seems to be getting, right? You try to make a play, you know, like I remember as a tight end, you get a holding call, you drop a pass, or the quarterback tries to force a ball, and just nothing seems to be working right. And then like it felt that way from very early on. Like it was almost immediately you could kind of tell like this game was not going to be going well, and the team just isn't equipped to kind of handle that kind of early adversity. Obviously, interception for a touchdown, interception on the first drive, and like they're just not built to handle that. And so anytime there's adversity that crops up like that at any point in the game, none less than the first quarter, I think you're kind of in for a long day, so to speak. So I think that's one element. I will say I feel a little bit better after watching the tape a little bit today. They had a little bit of all 22. I was able to check it out. Not every play, but probably about 40 of the plays. So felt better, but still it doesn't make it go away. It's a tough game to think about. It was a tough game to watch. A lot going on there.
Yeah, glad you brought up how the roster's built. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'm glad you brought up how the roster's built because the modern NFL nowadays is like mostly geared towards the offensive side of the ball. A lot of the rules are for the offensive side of the ball. It's like more of a passing league nowadays, and it seemed that this Washington team is pretty much built around the defense and controlling the time of possession during the four-game win streak. Time of possession, running the ball, pounding the rock, playing good defense. So my question is, basically, do you think that this team can sustain success the way that they're built right now, or do you think they need to pretty much gear a little bit more to the offensive side of the ball?
I think that's a really good question. I think it's a good like philosophical question. I think one of the things, like when you look at that win streak you mentioned, running the football and positioning the football, I think the thing that stood out to me about that stretch is that they were really good on second and third downs. And if you look at the past 3 weeks from the first Dallas game, they have been not good on second and third downs. And so what I mean, I keep bringing second down into this equation because oftentimes when you're a run first team, you can end up in a second and 8 situation, which is essentially like one play away from being a third and long. So they were executing really well there in the short intermediate passing game. Heineke was playing within himself. They found ways to kind of manufacture easy yards. And so, you know, like a 4-yard play there is a big deal. It gets you in a nice situation. So I think that when you look at that, and then that efficiency is very, very up and down. It's very, very open to kind of regression. And so they were outperforming kind of anybody's expectation in those categories. And then all of a sudden they kind of plummet back down to earth. And I think this is probably more their new normal, right? This is probably what is to be expected from this group. So I definitely think they need to upgrade on the offensive side of the football. That's something we've talked about on the show before. I think the most glaring need is obviously quarterback. You need to kind of get a guy who you feel good about building a franchise around long term. I think you need a number 1 or 2 wide receiver. I think you need another running back, a guy that's kind of a bigger body to take some of the touches away from Gibson. As much as I love Gibson, you guys know I love Gibson. They need to kind of get away from him touching the ball as much as he does. And I think also like another offensive lineman. And I think the good thing that you feel really nice about is everything in this draft is available to you outside of the quarterback, which is still up in the air. I haven't done all my evaluation yet, but very strong offensive line draft, strong medium, I'd say, wide receiver draft. You can always find running back. So I think if you're a Washington football team fan, that you are not very far away from an easy rebuild. If they had an off season in terms of the draft and kind of winning in the later rounds of the draft, I think you feel really good about where they're at next year. But they have to make sure they execute. Free agency is obviously coming around the corner. I'm not saying like ignore these last 2 games, but in order to get to this offense that you're talking about, Mike, it's not that big of a stretch. They've got a good tight end. They've got some pieces in place, just about complementing those pieces and make sure the group can get to where it needs to go.
So obviously, after watching that game, every Washington fan just feels really, really down.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you got a chance to watch like 40 plays of the all 22. You said you took away some positives. What are they? Because I have not gotten the chance to even get my stomach in order to go watch any of it.
So I think the thing that jumps out to me immediately is that they're let's start with the defense. And then, so like with the defense, everyone kind of talks about the defensive line, the defensive front, but the unit that's really carried this team is the back end coming out of the bye, right? They've just done a really nice job playing together, playing as a group. The linebackers have done a really nice job supplementing that back end and really matching concepts like we've talked about on this show before, matching concepts and eliminating stuff downfield and allowing the rush to get home in kind of these coverage shack scenarios. And so when you look at the film, obviously, like they're not starting any of their starting linebackers. They've all got backups in there. You're starting a new guy outside. You've got Cam Curl playing the Buffalo nickel and Reeves is playing the post safety. And basically when you do that, the way I kind of think about it, it's kind of analogous to like an offensive line, right? You've moved all these pieces around and you can't expect the chemistry and the communication to be the same way. Like I thought Roberts had a really nice game, but he had a couple busts like from a mental standpoint that are just reps driven, right? The more times he sees that route combination, the better he's going to know what to do. On the goal line on Zeke's touchdown, I think he got a little too enthralled with the number 1 receiver to his side. He needs to kind of get back to his zone and make a play. And that's not to pick on him. Everybody kind of took turns doing that. And that's what happens when the back end isn't communicating well. The rush can't get home and it makes it really, really challenging, right? And then offensively, I was really frustrated watching the game because I'm like, man, they don't really seem to have learned anything from the first game. But when you look at the film, at least from like a Scott Turner X's and O's offensive game plan perspective, you see he had some man beaters in there early, which I thought was really smart because they really struggled winning in man-to-man situations. So run a man beater, great job. Pair it with a zone beater, awesome job. Love that they did that. And then unfortunately that's on the play where Lawrence tips the ball up and makes an interception, running back for a touchdown. Like the process is correct, right? But the result is not correct. And that's a little bit execution. That's a little bit of dumb luck. Like there's maybe a handful of guys in the NFL that can make that play. And then I look at the protection issue and I say to myself, well, like I was really mad Micah Parsons was getting these one-on-ones, but they addressed it from the first game. They found ways, Dallas did, to get Micah Parsons one-on-one with Gibson, right? Mm-hmm. In this game, they did a lot of cross protection where they line the back up away from the slide. They bring the slide to the back. Parsons gets picked up by the slide, and you don't have Gibson in a one-on-one situation with the back. They understood who the one-on-one is on the offensive line. They chipped that side. They did some really nice stuff, but they still lost one-on-ones, right? So I think conceptually from a coaching standpoint, you say to yourself, man, this was good from that standpoint, but the execution was so lacking. I mean, even on the ball to Terry, you know what I mean? That is correct. That's correct process, but the ball is left inside and he can make a play on it. Yeah. And so I look at that and I say to myself, like, they're right there, but their execution was poor. And to the execution point, like, what is our expectation? Like as fans, as analysts, people who cover the team, what is the expectation? 40% of their team was not practicing last week. Then they have a short week of practice where they weren't even on the field. So they can't make any corrections. They can't do those things. Like, I don't know what I was thinking leading into this game. I thought, like they'll be able to get the boat turned around. They'll find a way to get it done. But in retrospect, that was totally unrealistic of me to have that thought even, they are dealing with something that's totally unprecedented in the NFL. And this is the result. And this is why this is such a difficult thing for them. And they're not the most talented team. So any kind of adversity is really going to muck it up anyway. So I think that's my thought on that.
My first thing here circled here, Logan, I wanted to talk to you about Taylor's first interception. I thought it was horrible. One of my keys to the game I'd written on Twitter that was not turn the ball over. First play, offensive possession, they throw that pick. And not only, it wasn't like a bad throw. He had one-on-one coverage. Terry had the step. You never throw that inside. He didn't even, Trayvon Diggs didn't even have to move. Terry was the one that had to actually work for that ball, which is the opposite of what you want to have there. And it's inexcusable, to be perfectly honest, because that's not how you start the game. But before I get too far, I just wanted to say the Burgundy Zone is part of the Frederick Podcast Network, and you can find out more at www.listenfrederick.com. But, Logan, the biggest I guess the biggest thing to come from last night wasn't the fact that Washington got blown out. It was the fact that they were fighting each other on the sidelines, and I don't think it goes. There's not that much that goes into it. I think a lot more people think it goes deeper than it is. Two guys fighting, but was it an alarming to you as it was to the fan base? Is this like a normal thing that teammates do, but just doesn't typically happen on primetime on the sidelines?
Yeah, I mean, I've had this question asked me a lot in the last 24 hours.
Right.
So I've seen some crazy stuff, like on the practice field in the locker room. Like you get these guys who are wired a little bit different. I count myself among them. Like you get paid money to smash your face into other grown men, and you do it a lot, and you have to have like a little bit of an edge to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to kind of be wired and built in a certain way. And I think the ultimate thing is that you're kind of conditioned to respond in a physical manner. You know, like I was in multiple fights in practice, multiple fights in the locker room. Like it's part of the culture, and it just kind of you wash it off, you move on to the next thing. It's totally fine, right? And I think when I look at that, I think those two guys probably know each other really well. Allen strikes me as a guy who's very kind of buttoned up and very on the line, kind of very conservative. And I don't think everyone else in that room is kind of the same way as him. I think his leadership style is very uncompromising. I think it leads to confrontations like that, right? I think Payne was probably in the wrong for putting his hand on him. And I do think Allen's in the wrong for trying to punch him with a closed fist. Like that's just how I feel about it. Have I seen crazier things in the practice field? 100%. I saw a guy rip a helmet off one time in practice and try to hit the guy in the face with it. Like, thank God he missed. But like that happens more than you think. You know, everyone was freaking out about the Myles Garrett thing. I've seen that happen in practice probably 10 times. And so, like, I think just to give you some context of like the environment that you're dealing with, and then you add the frustration of the last 2 weeks of that situation, and I think it's understandable to a certain extent. Is it forgivable? Like, I don't know. It's understandable for sure, though. And like, is it the way I would have reacted on prime time on a Sunday night game? Probably not. But I definitely understand it, and it's definitely part of the game in a weird way. I hate to kind of trivialize it, but it's part of the culture. I know they've worked really hard to get that out, but sometimes you can't, you know, it's just part of who those guys are. And I'm glad everyone's okay, you know, and I'm glad both those guys, no one's hurt. Hope they can get it figured out. And I would imagine that they can.
Would it be impossible to think that they handled it at halftime? Because Jonathan Allen made a comment saying that they talked about it as grown men at halftime, but when John came back, his ear was kind of bloody a little bit. Not sure what happened there, but would that be impossible to think?
No, I actually talked to a couple guys on the team. I haven't got the details yet. I'm going to talk to those guys hopefully tonight. But they said there was an altercation. I don't know if it's verbal or physical in the locker room at halftime, which is, again, like this culture here in Washington. You've seen that before, like against Philly a couple of years ago. They had a big altercation, confrontation at halftime. I feel like I hear about it more with Washington than any other organization, but it is not unprecedented. Because guys get fired up, man. Like there's lots of money on the line. There's lots of opportunities on the line. And I think that's always important to remember, right? Like this is a multi-million-dollar industry for these guys, and people making mistakes or people not doing their job not only affects you, but affects your family, it affects your livelihood. And all those things are very important to me. So I can only imagine how important it is to those guys.
Yeah, I agree. And at the end of the day, no one likes getting their ass kicked up and down the field like that.
That's
anyway,
true.
So.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, sticking kind of looking down the road, these last two games, I'm not even going to talk about the playoffs because I just feel like that's out of the question at this point. But looking at these last two games against Philly and New York, obviously New York is kind of, I would say, a pushover at this point. They're kind of just already packed it up, getting ready for their vacation.
Your mic went out, Hall. Just wait a second. You're fine. My next one for you, Logan, is the fan base is flipping out right now. They're going haywire. They're demanding that Rivera be fired, that Jack Del Rio be fired, Scott Turner. They're done with Heineke, and like I am to an extent, I guess. Because I truly believe that, you know, you deserve the stage, but what you do with that stage is on you, because that's all you can ask for is just the opportunity to do something. And I felt these two Cowboys games, Taylor was a direct reason why they were not victories. We were put into a hole that was not there because of Taylor. So my opinion, my question to you, Logan, does Washington blow things up? Do they get rid of Jack Del Rio? What are you seeing? Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think the fans' immediate reaction is to blow it up, right? But it's very, very challenging, I think, to change something that has been systemically, kind of broken for a long time. And getting the right types of people in here, getting the right types of leadership in here, I think is the first step, and they've done that. And you're not going to change something that was this broken, like in a year. I think back to John Wooden. I went to UCLA, right? And so John Wooden, it was like 14 seasons before he had a winning season, right? And then he became the winningest coach in college basketball, or whatever that statistic is, right? Over that, it's there's like some time constraint on it, but whatever it is. And I think like if he coached today, he'd been fired 3 times or 4 times. And I think fans need to be patient. I think this league does not lend itself to that, but I think that's ultimately what they need to do. I think I look at the roster, I look at roster construction, right? And I say to myself, like, well, they are a deficient roster at the moment. And to fix a roster, it doesn't happen in an off season. It doesn't happen in 2 off seasons. It happens in 3, 4, 5 off seasons. Like, you look at these teams that have done it. Like, I think the Bills are a great example. It took them about 4 years to get right. And then Seattle, when they were really rolling, took them about 4 years to get right. And so I think that's the kind of time frame you're dealing with. And so when you always want to blow up and move on to the next thing, like, that doesn't work for anybody, right? I do feel like they're handling it the right way. I think their process was sound this offseason. I think a lot of those things they didn't work out because of injuries and all those things. But I think the fans need to be patient. They need to take a deep breath. This is, I guess I would say, at the beginning of the season, what was their expectation for the season? Were they going to go to the playoffs? Like, what was, and so to me, that's a silly expectation because they weren't quite there yet. You know what I'm saying? Looking at Dallas, looking at some of these other teams in the division. And I think that they're about where I thought they were, maybe a little bit worse, but like, you can kind of account for that by the COVID and all the injury stuff that's happened over the last couple of weeks. So I think that's always important to keep in mind. And I understand fans are fans for a reason. They're really passionate and emotional about the team. So I understand that kind of feeling, but I do think they need to just take a deep breath. We got an off season coming up here. They're not out of it yet, technically, right? I think they can, play spoiled to Philly, and I think obviously hopefully they can beat the New York Giants. But I think these last 2 games are probably more telling for that. Like, if they don't win or they look really bad or they look kind of dejected or disinterested, then maybe that's a conversation you have to have. But as of this moment, I just look at the adversity that this team has gone through, and it's mind-boggling. So I think it's totally understandable.
So with that, and with the off season coming up soon, Terry's got 1 more season here. And what direction do you see us going into? Like, what's it going to take to keep him here, and what's it going to take to just kind of keep this thing going in the right direction?
Right. I think
I hope you.
I think that's a great question. What's that?
I hope you answer this correctly. I can't see Terry leave.
Yeah. So
No,
I think
not at all.
So I think a couple things there. I think it'll be really interesting to see what Terry's value is in the free agency market. I think Terry's a very good player. I've talked about this, behind closed doors and with close friends. Like, is Terry a true 1? You know what I mean? And do you feel that he is the guy that can win versus one-on-one coverage versus elite cornerbacks in the NFL? And Diggs, if this is a case study for that, I would say no. It's 2 games in a row. He's really struggled with that. And I understand, like, Taylor Heineke's not helping him out with the best place balls and all that kind of stuff, but you want your number 1 guy to be able to win in those situations. And unfortunately, he didn't get that done. And it's not entirely his fault. I'm saying that right now, but I do think that's something you need to evaluate. And I'd like to see how he'd look if the offense was a little bit more fleshed out, if they have a true number 2, if Curtis Samuels was even playing your slot role or something like that. I think all that stuff is an important part of the evaluation process. But I do think if you're a fan of football and you like competitive physical football, I think Terry's a guy you want around the organization. I think his leadership style is good. I think he plays the game the right way. I think all of those things, right? I think all of those things are important and I think should be valued. And I think this city and this team will compensate him for that, because I think he's a Ron type of guy. And I expect him to be around. Just depends on what the price tag is. But, obviously you got to make the best financial decision for the team and for the player. And he's going to make the best decision for himself. So, but I would expect him to be a piece of it moving forward.
Yeah, and jumping back to the whole Jonathan Allen kind of Deron Payne, to kind of branch off of that, I saw a lot of people trying to make it into like a thing where it's kind of like the microcosm of the dysfunction in the organization, and how Ron's kind of like lost the locker room, stuff like that. Like I said, me personally, I just think it was competitive. They were getting their asses kicked and tempers flared. But how important is it to kind of these last 2 games kind of come out and put your best foot forward and put max effort into this? Because like I said, last night, I don't think they per se gave up last night, but I just think that they kind of threw in the towel after the first half, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think there was a couple plays in there that were kind of indicative of that sentiment you're kind of discussing. I think that long almost touchdown to that receiver number 17 for Dallas, who kind of you just saw guys kind of
Cam
not
Curl is
mailing
one.
it in
I
a
love
little.
Cam Curl. Cam Curl is one of those guys, kind of just lollygagging, like.
Yeah, and you kind of get that. Like I played in games like that where you are trying to be in it mentally, but all you can think about is like not getting hurt, right? Because you're like, we're 2 games away from the end of the season. We're 2 games away from the off season. I don't want to be going to the off season having to deal with some type of severe injury or rehab or something like that. And in a game that, for all intents and purposes, is over. So I think that's part of it. I think it'll be. I think honestly, I said this on the show today, that getting them back to a normal work week is going to be extremely advantageous in terms of just kind of chilling everybody out, getting back into kind of their normal recovery kind of default position. I think is going to be crucial. I would expect them to come out and play with a good level of intensity against Philadelphia, because I do think, like Alan said in his presser after the Philadelphia game, he was embarrassed, and I think a lot of guys felt that way. And I think it's not entirely their fault. I look at when they get new people in there, how they misfit runs, all those kinds of things. Fans don't want to hear that, but I do think they're going to come out, get healthy, be much more competitive, and I think they're going to I think they match up really well with Philly when healthy, so I'd expect them to come out and play well, and if they don't, I would be very disappointed.
Yeah, and to wrap this up, Logan, I have a two-part question for you. The first one being Jeremy Reeves. Last night I do think that he was a bright spot. He was flying around with the football. He flying around to the football. He was popping dudes and doing really well. What have you seen from Jeremy over the last 2 games?
I think Jeremy's done a serviceable job, but I think you also see like why he's a backup sometimes. You know what I mean? I think I love the intensity with which he plays with. I identify with him. I empathize with him. And I'm glad that he's playing because he seems to play the game the right way. And I value that as a fan and as a practitioner of football. So I appreciate that about him. But also you see kind of where some of his deficiencies lie. You think about the Philly game and some of the completions to Dallas Goedert, how he had a hard time matching up in man-to-man situations, and how maybe Cam Curl does a better job in those situations. I do think he has a role on the team and a role within the organization, but what is the extent of that role? I don't think you want him to be a starter for an extended period of time. And again, like that's not a knock on him and not a knock on his play style, but I just think you can do better. And I think that ultimately, like one of the things about kind of covering the team and analyzing and stepping back, it's totally changed my perspective on personnel. And, before I'd be like, man, Reeves is a baller. Like he should be playing more. But then you realize it's not about how he's doing now. It's like, can we do better? And I think and to answer that question is ultimately yes. And that's a tough thing for me to say because I was that guy for a long time who everyone felt they could do better than. But that's how the cookie crumbles, and that's how you build good organizations. So good for Reeves. Glad he's playing well. He's definitely showing out. But I do think that his role will be more of a backup moving forward.
Yeah. Actually, that just made a question pop up in my head when you were talking about guys in the organization and talent-wise, and how you kind of had to just take a step back and realize, okay, now that I'm an analyst, I got to look at it from a kind of like a clear view. As fans of this team, obviously, like most fans, they just focus on Washington. They don't want to look at the other 31 teams. Do we kind of focus on, take a guy like Terry McLaurin, for example? A lot of the fan base thinks he's like a top 10 to 15 type receiver. Are we kind of putting too much stock into it because, for lack of a better word, there's been lack of talent here over the years? Or is it kind of one of those things where we do have talented guys, you just have to get the most out of them?
Yeah, excuse me. I think like all fan bases, they do that. They look at their team and they say, this guy's the best guy since sliced bread, and he's going to take us where we want to go. But I think if you look around the league and you look at other rosters, and we've done this before, we've played this game where you say, like, would you rather this player or this player? And if you go around, you really think about it, like there's a lot of players that I would probably prefer at receiver over Terry. And that's not a knock on Terry. That's not an indictment. That's just kind of like what he's been given and his role within the team. You probably want better players. And then I look at a guy like Cooper Kupp, for example, a guy who's a good receiver, very productive, and how he's helped by the scheme. And I do think Terry could benefit from a scheme that kind of suits his skill sets a little bit more diverse route tree, all of those things. But I do think as of right now, like he's like, people were mad that he got snubbed from the Pro Bowl. Does he really deserve to go to the Pro Bowl based on his production this season? Like maybe his history, perhaps. But also, like I look at the game, like, for example, last night against the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of his catches come when the game's over. It's out of reach. He has 3 catches in the second half of the football game. And that was something that marked his production last year as well. And I think if I'm evaluating, I think the defenses are in different contours, they're in different structures, they have different emphasis, they have different personnel in the game. And so, yeah, I would expect Terry to be effective in those situations, right? And this, again, I'm not criticizing Terry. I think he's a good football player. But I do think that that's something that fans need to realize. They need to go watch other teams. They need to go watch what a true number one looks like in a different organization and say, yeah, maybe Terry is he's a number 2. And again, he's a starting receiver in the NFL, but where is his position? Is he an X or is he a Z? I always think of him more as a Z because I look at, a guy like Julio Jones, who I played with in Atlanta when he was still kind of on the tail end of his prime. And I thought he's something special. Nuke Hopkins, I played with him when I was in Houston, right? I look at the guys like Debo Samuel up in San Francisco. Those guys, they have a different skill set, right? And they are helped by play calling. They are helped by play design, and that's important to understand. But I think it's also like, is he that guy? Is he that dude? And he makes plays. Like one of my favorite plays from the season was that catch against Tampa Bay where he got absolutely annihilated on the slant. Like there's very few people in the NFL that can make that play. So again, I appreciate his skill set and what he does. But I do think fans need to watch different stuff, get out there, look around. And I think it would change their perspective a little bit.
I totally do agree with you, Logan. And I want to thank you for coming on here and being able to break down this game for us because we need some logic, we need some rationale being brought into the room. And every time we bring the professor in, there's plenty of it, sir. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, by the way. I hope you had a happy holiday. I'm glad that we could finally get to meet up here and talk about this. Unfortunately, it's not under happier circumstances, Logan, but it's always a good time when you come on, sir. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I hope you guys had a good holiday as well. So,
of course, dude. It was fantastic, except for Sunday night. But yes, besides that, it was fantastic. Logan, you have a good night, brother. Until next time, be safe, brother.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Take it easy.
Appreciate it.
All right. All right, guys. So, without scraping out our eyeballs, without doing anything too dire or crazy, I wanted to talk about this game a little bit last night.
Do we have to?
I mean, we have to. I mean, to be perfectly honest.
That's fair.
Dude, because at halftime, I was concerned that, like, Coach Ron would go through, like, some sort of, like, health episode with screaming at them and, like, being so tensed up and worked up because Lord knows.
Like a mental breakdown.
Yeah, dude, if you saw us on the sideline after one of those plays, he's like, what is happening? What is going on? And I wanted to ask you guys, because I was going to ask Logan this, but, he brought us so much attention already. But I really do feel like a lot carried over from that Tuesday night game with Philly. Because I said it on Wednesday night. I thought that was the worst defensive performance out of this unit all season long. The way that they were getting spread out and ran the ball on hadn't happened all season. And then this boils over to Sunday, and I felt like something was growing with Philly, and we were finally seeing it come to fruition. And I don't want to say it's screw it. One of the 7 deadly sins is envy, right? And so I really do feel like there was animosity brewing, and which is unfortunate because you do want that maturity there out of your guys, especially good friends like that. But I do feel like there was something being in play there. What do you think about that, Todd?
I mean, yeah, sure, it's growing. It was a short week. Everyone's tired. Everyone's sore. Like Logan said, they didn't get their recovery week that they usually get, their routine. And so every little thing that happened not even 6 days ago. Yeah. All the little things, all the little frustrations. Yeah, Allen called out the defense after the Philly game. And that was one of the first things I thought. I was like, Payne probably took exception to that and sees how terrible everyone's playing as a unit today and wanted to say something back. So, yes, but they've been boys for a long time. They went to college together. They're going to be okay. Yeah. It's just, everyone fights, just not always on national TV.
Look, I'm guilty of it as well. My buddy Cam on the job site, dude, everyone will tell you about it that one day. We didn't actually fight. I told him, I said, Cam, I'm going to get down from this ladder. I'm going to come over there. I'm going to beat the crap out of you. Do you want me to do that in front of everybody? I don't want to do that right now. And it gets to that point, and it's unfortunate because I think both parties are at fault, like Logan said so elegantly and so perfectly. because you don't want Allen to react in that capacity on TV in front of the cameras. It makes the situation worse, but it's not like he's wrong for reacting that way. Duran shouldn't have done it in the first place, and that's the whole thing.
If the cameras didn't catch it, catch it and they didn't replay it 1,800 times, it'd be a non-story. It's a nothing sandwich.
Yeah, and this is what brothers do. And one thing that brothers do is that they fight, but it's the animosity is over and after that because it's a respect issue. And sometimes the only times that you can fix a respect issue is by dealing with it in this capacity where it is controlled, it is isolated, and it is okay when two parties are at will. And so that can happen, and I'm glad they did hash it out, get over it, because sometimes you do need to do that. That being said, I've always thought if you have that much energy to do all that, you should be inflicting it on the field, and they certainly did do that for the rest of that game. I thought John Allen and Duran were really, aggressive after that on the field, and glad to see it. What did you think, Hall?
Yeah, I like Todd's point where obviously, like Allen said after the game that they were embarrassed. We should all feel embarrassed, blah blah blah, stuff like that. And obviously he's taking accountability for himself. But it's like you said, I feel like this is something that's been brewing for a while. Kind of like you could say Jonathan Allen and Duran Payne were kind of at an even level. And then all of a sudden this year, Jonathan Allen kind of ascended a little bit higher than Payne. And I'm not, like you said, I'm not trying to say Duran Payne is like jealous of Jonathan Allen or anything like that. Like you said, I just think it's two guys that they've been playing together since Alabama. You could imagine they've only lost maybe a handful of games together at Alabama. So all this losing is kind of getting to them. And when you go on a 4-game winning streak and you have everything in front of you, you realize, like, all right, we finally righted the ship and everything's going right. And then all of a sudden you just get smacked in the face 2 weeks in a row. You give up over 1,000 yards of offense in 2 weeks in a row combined.
Can you repeat that? Because that's just, I can't even believe that.
1,000 yards of offense.
Yo, what's going on, yo?
Hey, everybody. We are now joined by our guy, Damien Bartonek of Dame's Dropback, Mr. Checkmark. How are you doing tonight, sir?
What's going on, boys? How y'all doing?
Not too well, sir. And judging by your Twitter feed, because you were at the game yesterday in Dallas at the stadium with the caption of pain, and with the Cowboys fans cheering behind you, I have to thank you for going there and weathering the storm through that, but I'm surprised you made it out.
Yeah, it was interesting, man. I mean, they weren't hating on me too much over there at the game, so I wasn't really tripping, but God, dog, man. I was like, like I said on Twitter, man, Heineke threw that first pick, and that's when I knew the Feds are doing a sweep. I was like, all right, we're about to get out of here.
Dude, that makes so much sense. And Mike McCarthy challenging with, like, when they're up by 40 points. Come on, dude. But let's go to our first question. This is from the Colonel, and I want to go to you with this, Damien. He asks, Is it fair to say that Jonathan Allen will not be the NFL's Walter Payton Man of the Year now?
That situation's so crazy to me. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know, man. Like that's, I guess we'll probably talk about that situation later, I'm sure, but man, I don't know about all that, bro. That was tough.
Yeah, I don't want that an issue between teammates in a small scuffle, like Coach Rivera liked to call it, to be impacting his Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I would hate for that to happen because it's not like he hasn't done work off the field and did a great job with it, you know. And so just because there's animosity, you're getting your butt kicked and you don't like it, and the only thing you could do is go after the one thing that you know is going to hit back and is going to actually absorb it, not freak out. I don't want to go too hard after John Allen in that capacity. I don't think so, Colonel, and I hope not. What about you, Todd?
I hadn't even thought about the Walter Payton Man of the Year award with this.
Brutal,
it's just, you said it, and my ADHD brain trailed off and just went into some deep, dark places, and I could absolutely see them just taking that away from him for that. So
it wouldn't surprise me the way that the refs were limiting their whistles last night with plays on the field. I definitely feel like they would limit Jonathan Allen in this capacity based off yesterday, without a doubt. But the Colonel's next question, Hall, I want to go to you with this. He asks, have we ever been beaten down by Dallas that bad before? And he said, why do I want to grab Mike McCarthy by his fourth chin and strangle him? Look, I understand. I get it. The whole challenging and everything. Look, Mike McCarthy is just, you know what he is, man. And just like with the whole Doug Peterson getting skipped out of Philadelphia, they want a certain person in there for Dallas that they could kind of be told to do things. Kellen Moore's running the offense. Dan Quinn's running the defense. Mike McCarthy's just standing there looking like, you know, the Ghostbusters ghost. There's nothing much you could do about it. What do you think, Hall?
I mean, yeah, look, I just look at Mike McCarthy. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl, but at the same time, you had Aaron Rodgers, so I would expect you to win a Super Bowl. But with that being said, he's pretty much like Jason Garrett point two without the clapping, 2.0 without the clapping and the red hair. He's kind of just the guy that Jerry just like trots out there as his pawn and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I can see why you hate the guy because at the end of the day, what does he really do? Like honestly, what does he really actually do? Kellen Moore's the one calling the offensive plays. Dan Quinn's the one calling the defensive plays. Mike McCarthy's kind of just there, just hey, I got 10 wins. Look
Right.
at me. I got 11 wins. Look at me. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think I've said this all the time. I've said this at the beginning of the season. Dallas is better than us at every single position on the field, except for head coach. So we can stick a feather in that cap.
Yes, and look, that is a good point. I like that a lot. But I want to go to our question here from Jeff Miles, and he in our Discord chat server. He says, honest question for the podcast. Realistically, what WTF do we have to look forward to as a franchise? He says, I don't care about the name. Besides this loyalty that burns like Indian food, why should anyone be a fan of this team? He says I'm not changing teams, but I want to know he's livid. I feel you, Jeff. I feel you. What do you think about that, Dame?
Yeah, I honestly can't give you I'm not the right person to ask that kind of question because man, I don't know, man. It's rough. Like, I mean, obviously I'm still a believer in Ron Rivera. So if you're still a
Right.
believer in him, like I think that's enough for you, especially going forward. But I mean, it's definitely, you can't be too optimistic when right now, like their issue is an issue that they've had for years. I mean, they've done stuff like this where they just implode at random times throughout season, throughout the last man, honestly, throughout my lifetime. I'm 23, so throughout 23 years, they've done this routinely, and they still don't have a quarterback. So, I mean, I understand, why everyone's upset, and it's not really easy being a fan right now. But hopefully, if they can land in the top 10 this year, they can draft a quarterback, and that'll be enough optimism for you to keep it going.
Yeah, look, Jeff. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you should feel a certain way or anything like that. But the last time that we got blown out in this capacity, they had a full roster out there and it was at home, and there was no hope, there was no future. It was kind of like in a well almost. This game, it almost seems like an accumulation of a bunch of crap that just went wrong. If you could attribute this season just unlucky, as much as lucky they were last season, they were unlucky this season. And look, I know you want us like it doesn't seem it seems bleak at the moment. But like the great quote from Batman that I've put on Twitter all day today, the night is darkest before dawn. And I truly do believe that. And this kind of grind was going to happen at some point. They got lucky last season. It could have happened last season, but they prolonged it by one season. And now we're starting to see it. There's no reason to think that this is the same as the old. Dan Snyder's not making football decisions. He's out. They have football people in the operations actually doing things. I know that everyone thinks that Ron Rivera has picks over the player selection, who gets brought in. They don't. They have a scouting department for all of this. They have advisors for that specifically. It's not Ron. It is the entire organization making these player acquisitions and everything. Trust. I understand how crazy it sounds, but trust the damn process. The last thing that we want to do is ship out anybody right now and then have them try to redo everything. It's not going to work. This is Dan's last hoorah. If this doesn't work, not much will. What do you think, All?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I feel like, I mean, yeah, definitely got like they definitely know that they need a quarterback. Like Ron's already said it a couple times during the season that finding that franchise guy is the number one priority this off season. Obviously, if you watched Taylor Heineke these past two games, both Dallas games, you would see that you clearly need another quarterback in here, a franchise changing guy that's going to be the staple of an offense, a guy that can kind of hide the deficiencies that you have on the rest of your offense and your whole team for that matter. But that's what I would say you have to look forward to. But again, like you guys said, I can't really tell you like how to feel or anything like that. I just know me personally. I've seen lower lows for this team. Honestly,
Yep.
this is not rock bottom for me. I've seen way worse stuff happen with this team, even going back to like a couple years ago when they were 3-13. So all I'm gonna say is from 3-13 to what do they have? 7 wins last year to I'll probably say another 7 wins this year. No playoff berth, but you can look forward to maybe possibly having a franchise quarterback because they know they need one now. So maybe that'll change our fortunes around, and we'll be a 9-10+ team win next year.
Last thing I'll
It's-
say. Sorry, Todd. Go.
I was just gonna say we all know it's been hard being a Washington fan for a very long time. But I think what I've seen the main difference is right now the reason I still have hope is this team's being transparent. Ron's out there telling you we need a quarterback. They're not trying to sell you on Taylor Heineke. They're not trying to sell you on Kyle. They're not trying to sell you on Haskins. They're not trying to sell you on RG3, on Brunell, on Patrick Ramsey. They're not sitting here and telling you that they have a quarterback that's going to be the future. They know that something has to change, and they're willing to admit that and move forward. And that gives me more hope than anything else right now.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean,
fantastic point.
Yeah, I think too, like you guys mentioned, like there's been lower lows. I agree as well. Last night and like Kyle mentioned too, like it was really everything going wrong. Like everything from the moment, like they had a great stop, right? And I was like, okay, that's kind of a tone setting, first drive for your defense.
Yep.
And then it's a pick, first play pick. And it's like, okay, you already know what kind of day it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like, I agree with y'all wholeheartedly.
And then the Marcus Lawrence pick 6.
Yeah. It's just everything that could have went wrong.
Right.
I still kind of think one of the lower moments, like lower than this, is actually like RG3's first game in 2013 after he tore his ACL and then he played Philly on Monday night.
I think that's week 1.
Yeah, I think that's a lower low. But yeah, man, it was rough. It was rough.
Don't tell Keith that. Keith might fight. I'm just saying. I love you, Keith. I know you had a hard day today working from home. Your wife was probably busting your balls a lot. But the next question I'm going to go to, back to you, Dame. And this is from our guy Sergio Martin in Spain. He stayed up. He was up at 2 a.m. to watch that game, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, Sergio.
Man.
Should have gone to bed, brother. Should have gone to bed.
He probably did. I'm not going to fault him if he did. His question is, do you think it is time to pass on Jack Del Rio? If so, who would you bring? Also, is Scott Turner in the hot seat? And who would you bring? Is there like a dream duo that you would like, Dame, to come in if they were replaced? Although we both don't agree.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with Del Rio right now. Like I said, that defense was terrible yesterday. But then again, too, kind of looking back at it, like they had a lot. They're playing a lot of practice squad players at the moment. Offensively is what I was more worried about than defensively. I think offensively I have a little bit more to say about that. But no, I'm fine with Del Rio. I mean, this team's played really well, before this, with really, really poor linebacker play, poor secondary play for the majority of this year. So I'm not really out on Del Rio. Their philosophy I'm fine with too. Shout out to my guy Big Doug, but I respectfully disagree. I saw him earlier say that building around D linemen for D linemen isn't necessarily like what you want to do in the era of quick passing game and stuff like that. I respectfully disagree because I think as a defense, you want to be able to rush 4, drop 7, and keep everything in front of you. So I think their philosophy is fine. They just got to get a couple better pieces at linebacker. Maybe, they need a better safety. They need to upgrade from Bobby Apke as well. And yeah, that was intentional, by the way. And yeah, so I think once they do that, they'll be fine defensively. Offensively, I'm not going to curse on this show, but you can't expect a coordinator to make chicken salad out of what every single week with a backup quarterback, with your 3rd, 4th, 5th string offensive lineman, and only one good, skill position player playing at the moment on the perimeter. You're asking a lot. I don't even think Jesus of Nazareth could make this, any better. So I think right now they just kind of need to strip it down a little bit, get a quarterback, add another piece, on the perimeter, and really start to build this thing up again because there's a lot of potential. And I like Scott Turner a lot. I know a lot of people don't really like him, or he gets slandered a lot. But man, I really, 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 beg someone to find me another coordinator that would be doing better work with someone who is a backup quarterback and a legit backup quarterback. He's not a starter. But that's my piece.
That is a great way to put it. I think you said it elegantly and perfectly. Jack Del Rio, no, I don't think it's time to move on from Jack. Although I will say early on in the season, I did feel like they were taking too long to make the adjustments needed in order to make some guys work and tools work. They were kind of stubborn in that aspect. But that being said, they've proven that they deserve to have the benefit of the doubt in that aspect. They are very qualified. Everywhere that they go, defense follows. And obviously I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. I just didn't like how long it took. And obviously what was going wrong there was something a gelling that had to come into fruition. And obviously the injuries, everything piled up. But regardless, why wasn't there more leadership involved in keeping this thing contained? And one, for example, is Jamin, because if Duran and John are in the same group that are linked up, they are niched to the hip. The one person that would benefit from that is Jamin Davis. And I feel like there was something missing in that room, to be perfectly honest. I'm just trying to figure out why that was not addressed and assessed. And that is my only criticism of it, is I understand they want to let them be players, but no, I don't think it's time for Jack Del Rio to leave. I don't think it's time for Scott Turner to leave, and I don't know who they could bring in besides Ken Zempese and Chris Harris. I think we already have the kind of replacements if you were to make that change. If, let's say, Jack got another job or retired, or Scott did get a head coaching job or whatever have you, they do have pieces in the building that they could bring in from in-house and that they could transition over to. But that's the most I would do. I don't have like a grocery list of coordinators. I think that we just need to execute better. And I think as a coaching staff and as players, honestly. What about you, Hall?
I'll start with Scott Turner. I'm not gonna really grade Scott Turner, like hard grade him until he gets a legit quarterback, like Damien said, because at the end of the day, Taylor Heinicke is nothing more than a medium to like high end backup, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with being a backup quarterback in the league. You made great money throughout your career, but yeah, you can't really evaluate how Scott has really run the offense because, like you said, all you really have is Terry on the outside. Logan Thomas has been injured all season. Curtis Samuel, I could probably count how many snaps he's played on my hands. Antonio Gibson's been banged up like majority of the year. And then obviously, like you said, Kyle, many times, losing J.D. McKissick was really the last death blow to this offense. Like, because you really have no more really kind of playmakers that can really get out in the open space and make plays. So I'm giving him one more season of a pass. Next year, they're going to get the quarterback. So I feel like that's the time to evaluate him. And for Jack Del Rio, like you said, it took a little bit longer than I would like to make the adjustments. But again, people are so prisoner of the moment because during that 4-game winning streak, people were praising Jack Del Rio and the job he was doing, how he was calling plays, how he was getting guys lined up and stuff like that.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you come out, get your doors blown off by a couple weeks in a row, and all of a sudden, it's doom and gloom. The world's coming to an end. Blow it all up. It's over. So I don't put any stock into any of that. Like you said, would I like them to make the adjustments a little bit sooner? Of course, because I definitely think that would have maybe gave us a little bit more leeway as far as like wins, loss total goes in the beginning of the season. But again, you can't praise the guy when they're winning and then you know what on him when they're losing.
You're absolutely right about that, Hall. And now our next question from our guy Paul Murphy out in Scotland, my guy. He wants to know, Todd, why is this result a shock? I predicted the Dallas would win to hit the 50+. They averaged 35 at home this season. Add in Washington's decimated with injury and illness. QB struggled to breathe last week. No play callers, a very short week, and we met a good offense. This is on the cards. We support and move on. Why is this a shock?
It's a great question. It really shouldn't be. It's a shock because we're fans and because we had hope, to be honest with you, because we caught lightning in a bottle with Heinicke at some points during the season, and we really thought that just something might go right. After that first game with Dallas, when we hung in there for a while, it looked like it was going to go the way this game went, and we were able to turn it around for a little bit. We all should have seen it coming. Let's be honest. It's
true.
CBS's pregame, they were like, every single one of their pundits said they were picking Dallas, and I sat there and said, yes, all right, it's gonna be a trap because they're all picking, they're all gonna look dumb and I'm gonna look smart. No, I'm sitting here looking like an idiot, like I do a lot because I pick this team far too often. But it's the hope that kills you.
I think the result is shocking, Paul. I truly do believe that. I didn't think that they were capable of doing it. I saw what happened in the first week, and it was going in that direction, but I did not think that they would literally take a grenade and just walk in there and blow themselves up. I thought that they were going to throw it. And Taylor, I will say this, Taylor threw that game. I mean, one of my keys was don't turn over the football. First offensive play, they turn over the football. And that was it. You could tell it was just going to be easy for them at that point. And it just made everything more and more difficult. But let's move on to our last question. Dame, I want to go to you with this. And this is from Coach Greg Curl, the man himself. He's asking, why did we play nickel all of the second half?
Probably because honestly, I mean, you're down what 35 after half. I mean, they're probably just trying to just throw what at the wall and see what sticks, man. I mean, you're just trying to stop the bleeding as best as you can, and quite frankly, I don't really think it's that big of a deal because what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean? You already got the doors blown off you. You got your own teammates fighting or your own players fighting on the sideline. Yeah, I think you're just trying to clear it and just get out. It's kind of like I don't know if y'all watch wrestling, but there was one time where Jeff Hardy came out and he was a little intoxicated on TNA. They had to call the match quick in like 30 seconds, and they asked Eric Bischoff after. They're like, "Why didn't y'all try to run someone else out there and wrestle and get a match in for the main event?" And he said, "Brother, we were just trying to get the F out of there as fast as we could." So it's kind of the same way, man. They're just trying to clear it and just get out, man.
Drop in, go home.
Yeah, I can understand that, and especially given the fact that they were without Jamin Davis on top of not having Cole Holcomb, and their linebackers were scarce, and that's what it came down to. It's unfortunate what happened yesterday because they're way better than that, but it's an accumulation. It was a perfect storm, and you saw one healthy team that's on fire right now that's playing like lights out go against a team that was struggling to find a rhythm and just to find a pulse, and that was so hard to watch because I feel like we stoke the fire of the rivalry more than the actual Dallas does, and so it gives them
100%.
even more bullets in the chamber to say like we don't even consider blah 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 blah. But that's not what you guys were saying when we beat you twice last season. So let's calm down a little bit now because you guys were crying. I remember that that little deuce that Antonio Gibson put up made you guys change rules actually. So it's not surprising that you would act in this capacity. But it's ridiculous that happened last night, guys. It sucks that we all had to get hyped up for that, but I had a feeling going into that game. And going over from Philly, it just felt like things were unraveling. But you thought if they had 4, they had a chance.
Yeah. I think me personally, I had them losing by 10 coming into it. But I wasn't really necessarily
so close.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily shocked more so with like the performance. Exactly. I wasn't like I was more so shocked with just how they lost their composure. Like they lost all their discipline, and they're being coached by a team, but where they're being coached by a guy that's like his number one thing. Like if they went 3-14 or something, if they were composed and just if they were disciplined, I think it'd be a little bit different. You know what I mean? But that was my biggest shock
earlier. Like you'd much rather them getting mad. Obviously, you don't want them punching each other on the sideline, but at the same time, you don't want them sitting over there. Like the worst thing possible is this team getting blown out 42-7, and they scroll over the sideline. Deron Payne, John Allen are laughing like, "Hey, yeah, man, everything is straight." Like you don't want that because it tells you they're just there for a paycheck. These dudes are pissed off. They don't like what's happening. They don't like that they have given away 3 games in a row. I said it after the 4-game win streak. It's great that you won 4, but if you lose 5 straight, it doesn't mean crap. And they're definitely on the way to that, and obviously there's exterior circumstances. But that being said, that kind of stuff can happen, to your point, Dame. And I did feel like there was a lack of maturity as a team overall, because I'm not going to sit there and say John doesn't it's not mature. That guy was mature. I don't know how he stayed on that bench afterwards while Duran's still barking at him, and he's just sitting there chill, just sitting there looking at the ground, just hanging out. And that's John. And he has more balls than me, dude, because I don't know how he contained himself. Deron Payne looked like he was about to shiver off of the bench. Did you see how much he was shaking? He was fired up, dude.
He looked like he had he was like angry tears, like he was about to start crying.
Yes.
He was so just like mad.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is, I was telling my dad about this too on the way back. It's a long drive back from Dallas from where I live, so we had plenty to talk about. And I told him I was like, I've talked to Deron before on and off, the record, and he is a very, very, very laid back person.
Yep.
Even to the point where some people, in the media told me like, you're gonna have trouble kind of getting words out of him. Basically, is what they told me. And for him to be that emotional, that upset, something must have happened during the game or on the sideline that just turned it up to 11. It wasn't just something small. It was something very major. So, yeah, I'm just glad that punch did not connect, because we'd be talking about something completely different today. It would have been a full out brawl on the sideline. Like, I guarantee you, they probably had to throw hands in the locker room at halftime. So it would have been nuts, man.
I don't want to make assumptions, but I'd be willing to bet that because of John's mentality, right, and mindset is like the no excuses, and like we have to take action for what we have done, right? We have to be accountable in that aspect, right? And I could easily see John coming over saying, either we're sucking, you're sucking, not doing this, blah, 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 something like that, because John wants to pump that out of you, wants to get you pissed off, so you want to go out there and do that. And in that situation, when some guys are beat up, are tired, they don't see it the same way. And I could definitely see that being a sort of thing, because John Allen is a different sort of leader. You know, he does carry himself to a certain standard and does not mind saying those sort of things. So I definitely think it was something along the lines, because like you guys said, they're best friends. They're really good friends. One thing, like to your point, Dame, I've heard that he's a teddy bear, that Deron Payne is. He's a gigantic, he looks terrifying, but he's a very nice guy, and he's really cool, and he's easy to get along with. And that was very surprising, and it kind of was telling to show the team where they are at the moment. And I don't want it to get blown up more than that, because I do think it was just an argument that bloomed out more than it should, and it's just what happens over the weeks of multiple losses. And they feel like they're probably the only ones fighting their butt off, and it ended up causing them to fight each other. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that they didn't have any support. And watching that game on Tuesday night, watching that game last night, it's hard to argue against them, to be honest.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
I know it's horrible I know it's depressing, man. But guys, I wanted to thank you for stopping by. This is somber. It sucks, but look, we're gonna sulk together. And I know the fan base wants to jump ship, and everything sucks.
Don't give up the ship.
I know.
Don't give up the ship.
Don't give up.
They want to jump ship week to week. It's all good.
Yeah, don't give up the ship. Okay, you know I am the captain now. Don't give it up, man. Take control over it and be the ones to do it. But guys, I want to thank you, especially Dame, for finally being able to come on here. We've been trying to link up with you, but you're a working man, dude. You work all the time.
Yeah, brother. Especially right now in retail, I work in the liquor business, man, part time. So I mean, I'm working during school. I'm at 30 hours a week. When I'm not, when the semester's done, I'm at close to 40. So, and I'm trying to get this bread,
Yeah, but you're not even covering Washington games. You're covering the Spurs out in San Antonio. You're doing a whole bunch, and then you also have Dame's drop back, right?
Yeah, so I do that. I do, the Spurs for Pounding the Rock, SB Nation. I do Rigo's Rag Washington stuff. I do Texas State Sports. So yeah, I mean, I gotta really like limit my days and really kind of block things off. But hey, man, it's all in the grind, man. Stuck in the grind. You know how it goes.
Before we get out of here, Dame, in the off season, I know it's way too early. I think it's way too early, but regardless, we got 4 minutes here. If in the offseason they're going after a quarterback, which avenue? Are you going down veteran, go big or go home, or are you going with rookie quarterback?
It depends on what Derek Carr costs you. That's who I really want. That's who I would.
You guys talk before these?
No, I think man, Derek Carr would be really nice in Washington.
Yes, sir.
I
on
think
the train, Kyle. Do it.
I think a lot of times too, with the way Scott Turner wants to play football games too, is really running the rock, and really kind of dominating time of possession. You're going to be in a lot of those one-score games, and there's honestly not many quarterbacks better in the clutch than Derek Carr. I think that'd be perfect, and I know they want leadership. They want leadership from that position. They want someone who can make the people around him better. I think he's the guy there. But honestly, if they go the draft route, I'm probably thinking Kenny Pickett. I'm being a little conservative here about it. Because I think he's going to be a sure thing, even though his hands are this. I don't even know what size my hands are, but I don't know, man. I mean, we'll see. I think it's either Pickett or Carr, man.
I love that, dude. Now, I said it in the offseason leading up to this. I know everyone wanted a quarterback in the last draft. I didn't think that was smart to mortgage up the trade, all that for it. Got in a bunch of arguments over it. All right, I get it. But it worked out perfectly for this draft because they are floating around that mid-tier. There's not that many teams that are really requesting quarterbacks at the moment because there are some vets available as well. So the amount of teams that are going to be drafting one in the first round is very, very limited. So in that aspect, Washington doesn't have to trade up for one. They're probably going to have first pick at one of the better quarterbacks of this draft. And hopefully they could get there because my thought process is I want to go down the veteran path, But I'm go big or go home. It's Aaron Rodgers for me. That's it. That's where they end the stopgap. Unless something happens with Deshaun Watson, then he is the number one. Because one aspect that said, if you're going to trade assets for a quarterback, you better make sure that quarterback can make something out of nothing in case something goes wrong, in case your weapons do fall out because you don't have those draft picks to supplement it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what kind of happened with RG. And Deshaun Watson has proven in Houston that he can do something with nothing. You know, he was doing a lot of stuff with just being by himself 2 seasons ago. So if Deshaun Watson probably would be the best bet for Wash if I was going to pull the plug. But I don't know, man. There's legal issues. What about you, Hall?
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously my number one pick would probably be Deshaun. I know a lot of people want Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. Those are just kind of like pipe dreams to me because one for one, I mean, Deshaun Watson too has a no trade clause, but I feel like we could probably maybe lower Deshaun Watson here, but Russell Wilson, I think he's pretty much set on like I want to go to a Super Bowl contender, probably in a big market, so like Sierra can like have her way and like be happy. And Aaron Rodgers, obviously, he's gonna go to a Super Bowl contender, big market type of guy. Probably Las Vegas if you ask me, which would free up Derek Carr. But you already know I've been on the Derek Carr train since before they even signed Fitz. I've been saying that a guy like Derek Carr would, for one, definitely entice Terry to stay around even longer. It would, two, finally give Terry a legit quarterback throwing him the ball down the field. And three, it would definitely make this offense legit, stretching the field. And to Damien's point with the comebacks and the leadership, Derek Carr since 2018 leads the NFL in comeback wins. So if you're gonna be a team that's gonna rely on defense, running the ball, and being in those close games, I want a guy like Derek Carr back there running the offense, leading us to game-winning drives.
I'm gonna start giving out questions. I'm gonna start giving out questions before every episode. And when you guys mark off Derek Carr as a quarterback, I'm gonna say, all right, you're not coming on. Like,
Can I ask you, Kyle? Can I ask you a question though, for
Yes.
real? Is it just because you look like him and you don't want another guy that looks just like you in the area?
No, it's just because
Got the same little chin strap beard going on.
a
Like
couple of our buddies are Raiders fans. And so for years, you know, I've been shooting him down. Like, Derek Carr's not that good, Kevin. Stop talking him up. He's not that good. Like, his Twitter handle was "My car is a coupe." Back when they had Amari Cooper. Like, he was all over him. I hated on him. And so I don't want to give Kevin the benefit of me being excited to have Derek Carr.
Man, the truth comes out.
That's where essentially where it
comes
is.
out.
That's because honestly, like I think AJ Atai brought up a good point. I mean, at this point, you can't really argue with an upgrade. But I do go in with the mindset that you go big or go home. That's why I kind of agreed with Matt Stafford, but it couldn't have been too much. And go big or go home. And I truly do believe that. But look, I'll be happy with anything, dude. I just want to win some football games. I'm tired of the fan base fighting each other like Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. I'm tired of everyone. I'm tired of everyone flipping out after every single one of these losses. Like, oh, we're back to the same old. Can we just calm down? It's not, dude. It's not. We actually have hope. We actually have direction and leadership, and somebody actually making football decisions that knows what they're doing. Please, can we stop and chill? Dame, I'm sorry. I know I dragged it on. Thank you so much, brother. Hey, guys, you have a good night. I hope you guys have a good week. We will see you again on Friday to break down this Philly game. I'll be there on Sunday with the Colonel if he still wants to go. All right, everybody. We'll see you then. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
Todd.
You should have said Reed. Is what you should have.
Damn.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on Friday. Washington football. Woo!
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!